All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, everyone. Deb and I are here to discuss a buyer's presentation and how important a buyer's presentation is going to be more than ever before.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to be discussing the buyer's agreement or buyer's agency forms. This is just things that you're going to be discussing with buyers to explain what you do and your value. Now, there's so many things that we could go over. We're just going to touch over a few, but to Century 21 agents, Debbie and I are working on the presentation, something for you, but most importantly, if you really want to dive into it and customize it and really get a wow factor with a buyer presentation and using MoxieWorks, set up a time with Debbie and she'll go over that with you or watch some of the training videos and classes on 21 Online and the Central One University. So many great tools and technology to help you. And I promise you, it might not happen right away, but more and more buyers, as soon as these changes are going to be made, are going to be interviewing buyers agents when they have to put their signature on a document to work with a buyer. They're going to start maybe doing a little bit more research, maybe doing a little bit more checking around because they're not going to be able to bounce agent to agent to agent anymore, or they shouldn't be able to with the agreement, just like listing agreements, listing presentations. More sellers interview agents before they choose to do business with them. More percentage, larger percentage of the sellers do this, interview agents, and a larger percentage of agents have listing presentations than buyers agents. I think that's going to get very close to neck and neck, or hopefully even more, because more agents use with more buyers. So we'll get started on this. Let me get in here and share my screen. There we go. And I will start. There we go. Sharpen your buyer's presentation. So, Deb, I'll let you run with it.
I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are. So, in 1920s, the exclusive agency became a thing, and all agents worked with the seller on behalf of the sellers, and there were no buyers that had, or buyers did not have representation in 1920s, right? And then that happened for quite a long time. And then in the 90s, buyer's agency was born. So they said, okay, now it's okay for buyers to have their own representation and sellers have their own representation, right? Because then it's helps the buyer, right? So the buyer has representation, someone to write the contracts for them and walk them through the processes and have their back. Where before it was just the sellers. The sellers were the only one that were represented, and the buyers were basically on their own and could do whatever. They didn't have anybody to help guide them through it. Um, Along the way, we had in 2019, the sellers got together and filed a class action lawsuit, right? And that alleges sharing commissions between the listing and the buyer's agent inflates the seller's costs and violates the Sherman Trust Act. The plaintiffs didn't want the sellers to be obligated to pay the buyer's agency commission. In October of 2023, the jury sided with the plaintiffs, which is the sellers, stating the buyer's representation is obsolete and the wealthy buyers can pay their own buyer's agent services, which is very important because that's what they put in there. The wealthy buyers can pay their own buyer's agent services. This is being appealed. Well, actually, it is. The appeal process has stopped a little bit because now we're into the settlement stage where NAR got together with their lawyers and the DOJ and said, what can we do to stop the madness? Because there were so many class action lawsuits that happened after the fact. It just got to be crazy. The numbers were astronomical. So they had to stop the process by doing a settlement. So that's where we are right now. As of March 2024, the class action lawsuits were up to like $205 billion. So they just had to stop it. And so they said, what can we do to make this change? Right. So then we got to the fact that they figured out a few different ways to make it change and to make everyone happy. The majority of the brokerages are all covered under the settlement agreement. There were specific little ones that didn't get covered, and they have to do their own settlements And I have seen over the last couple weeks or so that like Berkshire Hathaway and Redfin and that they are already settling on their own. So that's okay. Flip to the next one.
Next.
So what are we doing now? Well, the NAR settlement is has proposed to settle for, instead of $5 billion, $418 million. And they're going to pay that over a course of time because nobody has that in their bank account, right? So what also has been proposed is, are we going to work business as usual? Are we going to make moderate changes? And everybody is in panic mode right now, right? So we're going to try and help you stop the madness and stop with the noise inside your head. If you listen and talk to me about anything, I'm always telling you to don't pay attention to the noise in your head. And this is one of the things too. And part of the things with the noise in your head is, don't listen to the media, and
Mhm.
don't pay attention to social media, because that's just a bunch of people talking. We're the real estate professionals. Go to your sources, go to your National Association of Realtors, go to your Ohio Board of Realtors, talk to your brokers. Okay, because they're the ones that are on top of all of this stuff. So let's break it down a little bit. What they want, you can go to the next one,
Mhm.
is they want you to be talking to your buyers, right? Which we all want that. We all should be talking to our buyers. A lot of people have gotten into a bad habit over the last couple years of, when a buyer calls, they jump in the car, they take them to the house, they show them the house without even knowing if they can afford it or not, right? Because we don't want to lose that person to the next person, because buyers were flaky, right? We know that. Well,
Mhm.
it's going to stop. Okay. We're going to get into a path where buyers are going to be tied to us. Tony alluded that to a little bit there. And if you've been watching any of his videos coming before this from October now, you know that this is all changing, right? So what does it mean to you? It means you have to sit down and have your buyer's consultation, right? Explain to the buyers what the process is. Find out what their wants and needs are. Tell them, I'm going to help you find the right home. I'm going to negotiate terms of the sale for you. I'm going to negotiate the price. I'm going to work on all the paperwork for you. I'm going to talk to your general home inspector and get that scheduled, and then negotiate repairs if we need to. You need to explain to them that you're doing all of these things for them, right? You can fall back on a buyer's presentation to help you along the way. Hey, by the way, did you know you needed to talk to a lender, right? What are you going to talk to the lender about? Well, you need to have your down payment. You need to have your closing costs. You need to have your prepaid items like a home inspection, a home appraisal, and 1 year's home owner's insurance. And guess what? You're also going to need to sign a buyer's broker agreement with us. If you ever have gone to any of Hush's classes, and if you go to any going forward, he talks about the 4 pieces of money, right? This is what we need to speak to our clients about, the 4 pieces of money, along with all the other things that we do as an agent. Hash has flat out told everybody in any of his classes that he does talk about the 4 pieces of money to your buyer already for you. So even if you attempt to do this and you fumble a little bit like that, if you're using Hash or Kelly or anybody from Liberty Home Mortgage, they're going to cover it for you. So find out from your lender that you're using. Do you talk to the buyer about the 4 pieces of money, what they actually need in the transaction? You know, the more you have backup with your other vendors and resources, the better it's going to show that you're talking to every person that is a piece of this puzzle. You're just one little piece of this puzzle. You have all kinds of people to back up what you're saying, right? So use those people. This is part of your service to them. You're not just taking them over, walking them across a threshold, opening a house door with a key, and that's all you do. We know we do so much more than that. So explain it to your buyer. Take a little bit of time. Sit down at a Panera or sit down at a McDonald's or something like that, or even go to the local library and say, hey, I would like to meet with you for a short period of time before we actually go over. I want to know, do you know what all the documents are that need to be signed? Let's talk about that. before we get into the nitty when everybody's in a rush because we got to have that offer signed by 5 p.m. today, right?
Yep.
I jumped ahead a little bit, but
Oh,
you get the idea.
there we go.
So
Sorry.
there's the four pieces of money, right?
Right.
And this
There we
is
go.
what we have
Oh,
to
sorry.
talk to our buyers about, and it's not hard. And it's all we think about this stuff all the time and we know what this is, but talking to your clients about it, if you guys want to screenshot this, by all means do, because it's going to remind you of what your four pieces are. Of course, you have the down payment, right? They have to have a down payment. So they're either going to get assistance for that or they're going to have it on their own. They have to have their prepaids, their home inspection, the home appraisal, the 1 year of homeowner's insurance, right? Then you have your closing costs. So you have your title fees, your lender fees and such. The seller can help pay for those. So it's not so scary when you're talking to them about the four pieces of money when we know the seller can help pay for part of these, right? And then you have your buyer's broker agreement that you're going to go over with them as well. The seller we can ask them to pay for this as well. But if they don't pay for the closing costs and they don't pay for the buyer broker agreement amount, then these are the things that they have to bring to the table. So there's some places that you're going to get help with, and then there's some places that they're going to have to do on their own. And that's the cost of buying a home, right?
Mm-hmm. Next.
Having the compensation conversation with the buyer is really, really scary to everybody because they don't kind of know how to do it. So these are just a little bit of takeaways that I have for you guys. So when you're talking about it and you're going through your exclusive buyer's agency agreement and you get to that, you just say, look, I get paid at the end of the transaction once we have a seller accept our offer, right? We have negotiated terms, we've navigated the financing, the inspection process, and brought the sale to closing. What's my fee on your buyer's agency agreement? That's where you're going to list your fee, right? It's a percentage of the purchase price or a flat fee. It's whatever you guys decide. We're not going to get too much into the nitty about that, right? But just make sure you're not shortchanging yourself. Okay, so if you want to make 3% or $3,000 as a minimum, that's what you put on there because that's what you are going to be expect to be paid for, either by the buyer paying it or by the seller paying it, right? The seller can pay all of it or a portion of it. The buyer can pay all of it of a portion of it. What cannot happen is you cannot say, well, I'm just going to have 1.5% for this buyer and $1,500, but then the seller says, oh, I'm going to pay 3%. According to the new rules, you can't do that. So have what you expect to get paid on your buyer's agency agreement and then work from there. If you end up getting 2.5% and it's close enough for you, then that's fine. You don't have to charge your buyer the rest of it, but you have to make sure that you have what you're worth on your agency agreement. And your broker, whether it's us, me, Tony, Julia, Carly, we can all help you and talk to you about that. Or if you work with another broker, talk to them about how you're supposed to structure that on the buyer's agency agreement. Do you agree?
I agree
I just
100%.
kind of went off on a tangent about all that stuff.
And then the one thing, yeah, no, that's good. Well, just to kind of explain, I try to explain to agents every situation is different. You might have someone that just says, "Hey, I want to see this one house, and if I like this house, I want to buy it. If not, I don't want any other house." Your buyer agreement could be less. Like sometimes agents don't understand, like, well, how can my fee change? Or it's situational. Someone might say, "Hey, I want to just this one house, or just in this one development, or this or that, or yeah, they just really want to deal with you for a week. And if you can't find them a house a week, they're not going to look anymore. The time, the amount of houses, what you charge them can vary depending upon the situation, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, it can. So when you're first speaking to your buyer, though, you don't want to scare them away and throw that buyer's agency agreement at them right away. That's why you're going to talk about all the different things that are going to happen in the transaction. That's why you're going to talk about all the documents that need to be signed and stuff. Find out what they want, when you're talking to them on the phone, find out what their wants and needs are, and then say, great, can we meet? for half hour before we go into the property and stuff. Of course, you guys know you already have to have some things signed anyway. So adding the buyer's agency agreement to the consumer guide or the recommended vendor list or having your pre-approval is just another piece of paper is how you're going to have to look at it, right? But explaining why they have to do it is important. And I don't want you guys to get into this thing about, well, we never had to do this before, but now we have to do it now. We don't want to talk about that. You're just going to talk about this is what we do. This is how I get paid. This is how it's structured. This is how we do business. And just leave it at that. Don't, if someone brings it up, then you can explain that, you're doing it now. Everyone is doing it now or whatever, but you don't have to get into the whys and wherefores and start talking about the lawsuit and stuff, because if people don't even know about it, don't bring it up, right? It's water under the bridge and it has nothing to do with, right? So
I do have talking points, and we're working on that individually with agents because I don't want people to know the secret sauce of that
right.
is when, example, one agent says, well, what happens if someone says, well, I don't want to sign that, or I've talked to other agents and they don't want me to sign something like that. I'll give you a little teaser. It's required by all realtors. So the teaser is this: that other agent is breaking a rule if they choose to work with a buyer, don't have them sign an agreement before they show them houses. So there are things you can say to people to explain without explaining, to put doubt in their mind of why would someone break a rule, you know, and why would you want to work with someone that's breaking a rule or putting something, we as agents, the whole point of this agreement is to be transparent with you as a buyer of what my obligations are, what your obligations are, how I can compensate it. What is that other agent doing? That why would they break that rule? So that's a little teaser, but I could go into some scripts with that because I know that's one thing agents have said. Well, what happens when I say it's a rule and there's other agents that don't? Well, there's things that you can say that just the class doubt of why would another agent want to break a rule?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And also, giving them choices of, like he said, this is just for this particular area, or it does have a beginning and end on it. Don't forget,
right.
so we're talking about the buyer's agreement at that point, but the consultation itself should be done so that you're trying to waylay your buyer's fears, show your value as a real estate agent and why they want to work with you. I do have the buyer's guide that helps you with the talking points. And like Tony said, we're going to be revisiting that and see if we can boost it up a little, make it a little bit better for you. But it's on Homestar, it's on Moxie Present. It's in Moxie Present, the buyer's guide. So you can use that. Any agent could get to it that's with Century 21 Homestar and use that as your starting point, if nothing else, to help you and remind you of the things that you should be talking to them about. What is your lender going to be looking for and such like that. Uh, this one I thought was really cute because it's getting hot outside. So
Mhm.
you can use this as lemonade you with your real estate transaction. So let me aid you with your real estate transaction, right? I thought that was kind of cute little play on
Yes,
words there. And you
like
can
it.
put some lemonade mix in there or give us some fresh lemons or stuff like that. You can use those little like Crystal Light has the individual packets. You could throw a couple individual packets in there and they just, all they got to do is add water and they got some lemonade on you, right? And make sure you're including your business cards or if you have little stickers that you put on things and stuff. So that's my little tidbit for your business today.
You got it. And class is coming up.
Yeah, so we finally got some classes from our favorite peeps. We got Mike is doing core law. So if you need law, May 29th, that's Mike Ferrante's class. Elgar's doing fair housing on the 23rd. You do have to pay for that class. It's $10 if you're a member of Elgar. It's $25 if you're not a member of Elgar. And then Hesh is doing another class on 3 things to qualify for a mortgage. And then on July 11th, he's going to go over the buyer broker agreements and lending again. He's going to be adding some more tidbits on that one. And then he's doing civil rights fair housing on August 11th. We don't have any information about ethics yet, so I'm not sure who's going to be doing an ethics class yet. But as soon as I find out one, I'll let you guys know.
And that, I think we're good. So
Yeah, we are good. So
there we
bottom
go.
line is that we really just want you to be speaking to your clients before you get into going through and walking them through a home, just to not only show your value, but get them comfortable with you, because the more that they're comfortable with you and working with you and understand that you're there for them and you're not just a door opener like the media says, the better off you're going to be as an agent. I can tell you that mostly just about anyone that I've ever talked to that said, "Oh, I usually get the seller to pay this for me. You don't have to pay anything." Well, if they're not going to pay you, I'm going to pay you, because most people want to make sure that you get paid. They understand the value of that. You always are going to have those few people, whether it's a buyer or a seller, that don't want to pay anybody anything, right? I want to
Yeah.
go to where they work because I want to get free too. That's
Right.
my
And that's
thought.
one of the little scripts or things I tell agents to say, like when the buyer says to me, so I have to pay you, said, absolutely not. It's not that you have to pay me. Now it's your responsibility and obligation to make sure I get paid by who. And it could be you, could be the seller. If all of a sudden you and the seller don't want to pay me, if you have a friend that wants to write us a check, fine. It's someone's got to pay for my services. It's just who's going to do that. So you have the control now as a buyer to decide who. You can make the seller, you could be a combination, could be someone else. So when you take that, sell them two things. One, in my opinion, you tell them, no, you are not responsible by personally paying me. And two, you have the control. People like to not have to pay and they want the control. So you get to tell me, you get to tell other people who's going to pay me, and you don't have to, but you're responsible making sure I get compensated. It's just because you are the one benefiting from all my services that I'm telling you. So you have to practice those types of scripts of what comes out of your mouth best is explaining, no, you don't necessarily have to pay me yourself, and you are in control of deciding who, and this is what we agreed is my compensation when we get to that point. It's very, in theory, simple
Yeah.
concept. It's just how to say it. So
Correct. That's
but we'll
correct.
be
And how to put it on the purchase agreement. And I do have specific language that you can add to the purchase agreement. That please contact me if you want to know what it is, because Hash told us what to put on there.
right.
And if you're talking about a VA or an FHA deal or something like that. So especially VA, where VA has not conformed yet. Conventional lenders and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Sallie Mae have all gotten together and said, okay, we're good to go. It's not going to affect the closing costs thing. You can add it in a separate section and it'll all be good. It's not going to affect the loan. VA has not done that yet. So we'll find out if they're ever going to conform or not, or if they aren't. I know how to put it on there so you can get the seller to pay it. So just ask me. That's one of those secret sauces things we're not going to divulge on this video.
Exactly. Well, good. We'll always reach out to Debbie or myself. We're happy to help you individually. Get on our calendar and sit down and discuss this. We'll all be ongoing for a long time, for forever. We
Yeah.
will always discuss this. So if you need something, let us know. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye bye now.
Bye bye.